friends, it's Maryann from Out and About, and here I am on Cherry Street at the Lafayette Durfee House in Fall River, a hidden gem, the only restored colonial house that is open to the public for tours. They're open on Sundays, but we're going to take a look today, so come on, join us on this tour. Hi there, I'm having a nice little tea party here with David Jennings and Pat Taylor, two members of the wonderful organization that keeps this beautiful Lafayette Durfee House up and running. So hello David and hello Pat.
Good morning.
Hi Maryann.
So could you please tell me a little bit of what your role is here at the Lafayette Durfee House?
Currently I am the president of the foundation, and being a reenactor, I dress up in clothes like this and we do tours, and our goal here is to preserve this house. This is what we are, primary goal of the Lafayette Durfee House is to preserve the house for future generations of Fall Riverites, and to conduct educational programs here for the children of Fall River, as well as other social groups that can come down and tour the facility, learn some things about Fall River history that they might not even know about.
That's excellent. So it is the only restored colonial style house that's open for tours, correct? And everything in here is basically 18th century. Is it all from the house, or is it a collection of artifacts and furniture of the period?
It's actually a collection. We have some things on loan from the Fall River Historical Society. We've had a lot of donations. David has given us, or it's on long-term loan from David's collection. But we tried to recreate the room as it would be. Like, this is the dining room, the other room is living room, the kitchen, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. So we try to recreate what we have, and it was sparse in those days. So thank goodness it's not, we don't need that much furniture. So that's a good thing.
I know. I volunteer at the Historical Society, and there's such a big difference between the Victorian period and the way that they decorated their homes, which was so much, and then this, the colonial style, which is really very interesting. You know, I'm always amazed in Fall River, being also a member of Little Theater, that people who live in Fall River say, oh, I've never been to Little Theater, or I've never been to the Historical Society, or I've never been to the Lafayette Durfee House. Well, I want to encourage people this summer to come out and do this. And if Dave Jennings can dress up in this hot outfit in the middle of summer, then people, you need to come out here. Now, it runs on a volunteer board, is that correct? Is it all volunteer?
We are all volunteer, and there's no paid employees here. We rely on grants, our membership dues, and donations to keep the place running. And as time goes by, the house is getting older and it needs, some repairs. And so we're reaching out to the public to donate some, or become members, and we do need to expand our membership base, so that we would like to see more younger children, young kids, young adults, families join. We'd run a myriad of programs here for children's reading, story hours, Christmas programs, things in general that pertain to 18th century, as well as other time periods in the city's history, not just solely 18th century. And high school kids and college students can use this time here if they want to join or if they want to volunteer as part of their public service commitment to their education.
Now, Pat, as a volunteer, what are some of your duties here? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, I do come in and clean once in a while, and we all help out with the garden. I take my turn. We have a schedule that we follow for being a docent on Sundays. We're open just from on Sunday 1 to 4. It's all volunteer, and it seems like everyone's busy, so it seems like Sunday is a good day to have it open. we do have usually punch and cookies when they come in. And we had David Mello here. He's a great supporter of the Lafayette House. And he has his kids come down and they read a book. And then they have activities. David has colonial toys and medicinal artifacts. That's really interesting. And to get back to what you were saying, that a lot of people don't know we were here, we were on that dinner tour one time. And we served delicious Indian pudding. And people were coming in, and I'm like, I didn't know this was here. And we've been here since 1973. And we advertise as much as you can, but it gets overlooked. But it is a beautiful place to visit.
And I think it's important what you said about trying to build up your base. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is today. And I know Pat had given me a brochure a while back with a membership form. And to become an individual member, it is only one of these, $10. So I am today going to become a member, and I would encourage anyone out there who's interested in history, in the history of our city. And we're going to be finding that out in the tour today, who stayed here, what they did. Well, probably not everything they did. But anyway, for $10, you can become an individual member. And we encourage you to come down here this summer on a Sunday afternoon and either become a member or give a donation and be a part of saving this wonderful historic house in Fall River. So Dave, where are we here? What is this room that we're in?
This room is the formal dining room. This is where the family would eat. The people that worked for the Durfees would not eat in this room. Back then, things were separate. You did not eat in the kitchen. The servants and slaves, Durfees did own slaves back then. They would have eaten here separate from the kitchen and be served by their servants. Over here, we have a more formal gown. Is made by Hallie Larkin. She's a historic costumer, internationally known, has a shop here in Fall River, and is one of our members. When I say hand sewn, there's no machine sewn on it. This is all needle and thread. The silver here, the tatting here is getting a little worn because it's over 200 years old. But this is a silk gown that the lady of the house would wear when receiving guests.
It's absolutely beautiful, and yellow is my favorite color. I wonder, did they corset at the time in colonial times?
We'll go upstairs, and you'll see a set of stays. That's hand-sewn, handmade. They would put children in stays that are around 6 months old, boys and girls. So there's a lot of information that we have here that people don't really realize what went on in colonial life, and that's what we try to expound upon. And get the kids. The kids are really interested, and a lot of it, of course, a lot of adults as well. But the history of Fall River is not. It doesn't seem to be as emphasized in the city anymore in the school system because of the changes in education. They don't have the time to do it. So we have become part of the 21st Century After School program, and we have children from different countries. A lot of immigrant, a lot of transient children, 5th graders, that come through here and are totally amazed by what happened. And we tried to put them in the frame of mind of what it was like to be a kid back then. So we have them do chores, like carrying firewood, carrying water, things like that. Yeah.
Very nice. So there's a beautiful little dining room. It is relatively little. How many people lived in the house?
I believe there were 7 people, and plus they had servants. Servants' quarters would be up on the 3rd floor. We have working fireplaces here. Until about 5 years ago, there was no heating system in this building. It was all heated by fireplaces. So we had to curtail our hours during the winter because whatever the temperature was outside, the temperature was inside. The house has been moved twice. The original site for this house is up on Main Street near the Superior Courthouse, and where the Children's Museum is. And if you look behind that corner of the Children's Museum, you'll see the well for this house. It's still there.
So in what room are we now, David?
We are now in the formal sitting room, or the front room, parlor, receiving room, whatever you want to call it. This is where the Durfees would receive their guests. They might have a musician in here, play board games while dinner is being prepared. Also, we have a spinning wheel here, and some work was done in this room, obviously, because they didn't have that many rooms to livable space. So this is a spinning wheel where they would have spun wool. Fall River at this particular time there was about only 20 families living here in the 1780s, 1778, 75. They were mostly farmers, subsistence farmers. That means they grew food for their own personal use, as well as they raised sheep for their clothing. And this is called a great wheel, and it is used for spinning wool, not flax or linen.
It's very big. Is that the size that most of them are, or is it larger because it's wool?
It's wool because it's larger. The smaller ones are used for spinning flax into linen. Okay. This is called a walking wheel because to use it, you would be walking back and forth. We have found houses where the women had to actually worn the boards through where they've walked so far. This is a winder. After the spindle gets full of yarn, then it's wound up on this then it's taken to a loom to be woven into fabric. Back then, it's been estimated that it would take 100 man-hours to make 1 square inch of cloth. So it's a very labor-intense operation. And people would will their underwear down. They'd will their sheets. They'd will everything because nothing got thrown out. The clothes didn't get thrown out because they were just so valuable, especially living in the colonies, and in a rural area like Fall River was at this time. The topography of Fall River is such that it's not suited for farming because it's so hilly, but it's suited for goats and sheep. So, and timber. They cut a lot of timber, sold firewood to Newport. Newport was a vibrant harbor at that time, a vibrant port. Taunton River in the late 1700s, early 1800s was a pretty busy place as far as industry is concerned. We had shipbuilding, fishing down here, and then when the mills in 1803 to after the Civil War in the early 1900s, when the textile industry was prominent in Fall River, the waterfront was really prosperous, and that was living in Fall River. We have an abundance of clean water that not a lot of places have. We have the Taunton River, we had the Quikasham River before they put it in pipes, and we have the Watuppa Ponds. Not a lot of places have drinking water like we do, and it's our job to take care of this, like it is our job to take care of the history of Fall River.
Now, when I walked into this room, and I've been here before, but when I entered this room, I was startled at the color. Looks like a modern color. Now, do you research colors that might have been in the house and then try to reproduce them?
Yes, we've done our research in colonial Williamsburg and historic Deerfield in Massachusetts. And the reason why these colors are so vibrant is because you have to remember they didn't have electricity. So this color was chosen to reflect light at night from the candles and oil lamps that they used. Through laser technology, modern laser technology today, we can pinpoint the exact color of a piece of wood that, say, is 200 years old. You can see through the layers and pinpoint the exact color that it was originally painted. So these colors, they look modern, but in actuality, they're a practical color as well as, they look very nice, against the white wall, the whitewashed wall. And as a reason for whitewash is these fireplaces smoke, as they did back then. Well, ours don't. These are modern fireplaces. They do work. But back then, the house was usually had a film of soot in it. So every spring, when they say they're going to whitewash something, this is where it comes from. They whitewash the walls to get rid of the soot and then freshen things up.
Well, I think this is a delightful room, and I wouldn't mind spending some time playing cards here. So let's have a game later, okay?
Yeah, sure. You notice that the cards, they don't have numbers on them.
How do you play?
They just have the symbols, but no numbers. If there's a 4 of clubs, you've got 4 clubs on it, but you don't have the number 4.
So it took a little more mind power then.
It took a lot of sobriety to play cards. Okay. They gambled on everything. They gambled on board games. They gambled on the throw of the dice. that was one of their pastimes, was gambling. And sometimes, and they held lotteries for sheep and cows or whatever.
You called it a pastime and not a vice. So
right. Well, that's how they.
I guess when it's entertainment, it's a pastime.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So we're going to get on to another room.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, all right, Dave. You don't have to tell me what room we're in because I can see what room we're in. This is the kitchen, correct. Tell us a little bit about this kitchen, please.
Well, this is the heart and soul of the whole house. This is where the meals are cooked, the clothes are washed, the servants and slaves are fed, all out of this room. We have a hearth here that actually works, and we do some hearth cooking with the kids in the after-school program. We have a beehive oven. All these fireplaces in the building have been modernized so that they are NFPA approved and building inspected, by the fire department and the building inspector. So they are fire safe, and that's primary, But over here in these, can we walk over here?
Sure.
Over here, they would have had at least 3 fires going. They didn't cook over open flame. They cooked over coals. So you might have something going on here. This is called a crane. And you would have a stew or a soup being cooked here. You might have a roast on a spit over here. And you might have boiling water over here on another crane, on another...
so 3 different fires would be going.
For 3 different purposes. Now, at night, what the ladies would do is they take the hot coals from the day's fires, and they would put it into a beehive oven, okay? Then they would close the door. There would be a wooden door there. In the morning, when they got up, they would prepare their bread for the next day. They ate a lot of bread,
Filling, very
filling. Very filling, and provided carbohydrates and calories for the day's work ahead of them, because these people are farmers. They're relying on manpower and animal power. They don't have machines to really do all their hard work. So in the morning when they got up, they would shovel the coals out of the beehive oven, and then a lady would stick her arm in it. If she could not keep her arm in it, then she knew that it was at the right temperature to bake bread.
Yikes!
Yeah. But they had no control of it. There's no thermostat on it. There's no draft system to heat it up, heat the flames up, or cool them down. So this is the way they determined, through trial and error and experience. This is how they determined the temperature of the oven.
So how many slaves or servants would be in a house this size, generally?
This size, they probably had, I'm sure they had 3 or 4. I know they had 3 because they were willed down there. We found they didn't find their names. We only found one name, and his name was Jock. He was the oldest slave. Then there was a Negro woman and a Negro child. That was how it was probated. When Thomas Durfee died, he probated, willed these people down to his wife. And in 1787, Massachusetts actually abolished slavery, so these people were actually free right after the American Revolution.
Correct, but many of them might have chosen to stay because they had nowhere to go.
Well, they would have had nowhere to go, but they would have had at least lodging, food and lodging. They would have had indentured servants here, definitely. The Durfee's property went from Central Street to President Avenue, and then from the river, Taunton River, up to North Watuppa Pond. That was the Durfee property. That is one sizable piece of land. So in order to work that land, they would have needed people. The family just couldn't have done it all by themselves. So they would have needed indentured servants, people who they paid the passage over to come here, and they would work for about 7 years on the land, and then be set. Their bond would be secured, and then they would be free to go wherever they wanted to go. The slaves were here for life, but it was I'm not saying it was good, don't get me wrong, but it was different than down south. They were treated much better here, even though they were considered property. They were treated better here than they were down in the southern plantations.
Now, this room just lends itself to any sort of party or activity. Do you rent this room for any birthday parties or such?
We rented birthday parties. We've had birthday parties. We've had retirement parties here, Christmas parties. Especially in wintertime, that Christmas season, the house is decorated in colonial Williamsburg style. In actuality, in this area, with the puritanical influence, they would not have decorated. Christmas is considered a Catholic holiday, not a, let's say, Protestant or Congregationalist holiday. But in Virginia, they were more liberal, and it's very entertaining to see, especially on the preservation tours, to go to the Victorian era Christmas house where the Historical Society is decorated, and then to come down here to see the way it's decorated here. The table here, this is where we have our children's activities. We also put on different things, events here, exhibits, I should say. We have 18th century weaponry, 18th century clothing, surgical and medical items that we put on display. Some are reproductions, some are actual medical items that were used. So this is what we entail, and we want the public to come down and see what life was like, and the colonial life was like in 18th century Fall River. Fall River at this particular time was part of Freetown, but this area here was always called Fall River because of the falls of the Quequechan River. It's kind of difficult to explain the falls of the Quequechan River when the falls are underground. They're now. They paved them over, but behind Wow, and that's what we use as a landmark, Wow, the gym, behind there is one last remaining fall. And this is where we take the kids on a tour, and they're quite amazed. Now, over here, we have the 18th century Minuteman's gear, the powder horn, cartridge box, canteen, his musket. Back in the 18th century, it was, the gun law was you had to own a gun. So this was used for self-defense, and also to put food on the table. There were several, I mean, the place was teeming with wild turkey, deer, ducks, wild geese. So that supplemented their food as well, because with the food that they grew, the vegetables that they grew. A lot of corn, that's what they grew. That's a lot of wheat to make breads with. And then it was also a difficult time to preserve your food in the 18th century. So you knew how, a good housewife would know how to make enough food and preserve enough food to last through the winter, because if you ran out of food, then you had to go begging to your neighbors, and they didn't like to do that, and the neighbors didn't like to give up their food, because that was just part of it. They pickled everything, they smoked it, they stored it in their root cellars on the ground. They might cook a pie up and then smother it with lard to preserve it. So
it sounds delicious. I'm not sure.
By today's standards, you know, you're not. It sounds pretty gross.
Well, Dave, thank you. I can almost smell the food cooking in this 3-fire fireplace. Love the kitchen.
Okay.
So, Dave, this looks like a men's bedroom to me, because I see some very manly clothes and some very manly wigs, and I guess
Yes.
wigs were the thing back then, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Most men that were middle class and above would have their heads shaved so that they could wear their wigs. The wigs was the fashion of the time. Started with around Louis XIV, the Sun King. He went bald at an early age, so his entourage started wearing wigs to be like the king, because the king wore a wig. Mm-hmm. So this system, or the fad, took off, and for about 100 years, everybody wore wigs. It was just a fashion statement. But you could tell what a man did for a living by the style wig he wore. The more curls in the wig, the higher status he had in society, and the more important job he had. If he was a judge, he wore, and actually it goes back to, if you look at the English court system, when the English judges come in to a court, they have these long, it goes all the way back
Still
to that.
to
You
this
see
time.
the curls in those wigs, and that's part of the tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, were the wigs made out of human hair, animal hair?
Animal
it
hair.
wasn't synthetic. So.
Animal hair and human hair. Horse hair was one. Yak hair was another one. And of course, human hair. A woman could sell her hair. The most prized wig was a white wig.
Ooh, I think I see a new career. No.
The reason why, wait till you find out why.
Uh-oh.
The reason why they were most wanted because, and they were very rare, is because a lot of people didn't make it to have white hair. They died before their hair actually turned white.
Sure.
So when you had a white wig, that was a sign of status.
And you had money to
and you had the
buy
money to
something
buy
rare.
it. Exactly. Something rare, right?
Nice. So then, this is a man's bedroom.
Yes.
What kinds of things in here do you think would be
you see the wigs.
notable?
We have a tricorn box here. People ask me, what do you put in a three-sided box like
a
that?
flag?
No, you put a three-sided hat.
A
in it.
hat, of course. I should look at
Okay.
you.
We have clothes that are laid out. These are fancy clothes by our standards, but by the 18th century standards, they're not. They're just upper middle class, maybe, middle class. We have a rope bed here.
So the frame is rope?
And this is a rope key. So what you would do to tighten your bed up back then is you would put this in here, like this. And then when I tighten the rope, you can see the bed move. Then you would peg it, and you'd go to the other side, and you would tighten it up. And that's where you get the expression, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite. All right. The bed bugs would be in the mattresses and all kinds of other vermin because the mattresses were made out of horsehair, corn husk, corn cobs, anything that they could stuff a mattress with hay, you know, just to keep it a little bit more comfortable than sleeping on the floor. Now, there are no bathrooms in this building in the 18th century. Okay, in fact, they rarely took a bath, maybe once or twice a year, because they thought that by cleaning your body and removing all the dirt, bad vapors could come in and make you sick.
Well, that's why there were no white wigs.
Yeah, they had no idea what caused diseases. They didn't know why one child got sick and another didn't, why one child got crooked spina bifida and another child didn't. So like I said, there are no bathrooms, so they used chamber pots and party chairs. Now this chair here, it looks very ornate and very interesting, but it's a party chair.
Oh my.
So it would be the servant's job or the job of the youngest child to empty all the chamber pots in the morning.
Nice job. Nice work if you can get it, right?
Nice work. Good work if you can get it. Also, behind us we have a bed warmer and a brazier over here on the floor.
One question about the chair. Would it have been an upholstered chair?
Yeah. This is an 18th century chair.
It doesn't seem very smart that it would maybe get soiled, but
Well, a lot of things were dual purpose back then, you know.
sure. So.
So they didn't throw anything out. They recycled just about everything they had. Like I remember I talked about cloth being so expensive. When it came absolutely the time you had to throw it away, they actually made paper out of it. That's the first thing that they didn't make paper out of wood. They made paper out of cloth back then.
And they would use the chamber pot under the bed as well,
Yes,
too?
they would. Yeah, that's
addition
in
to
the
this?
other room. We have that. But the bed warmer is to keep. They would pass that with a hot coals in it to pass that between the sheets, so that when you got into bed, it was warm. The brazier here, the ladies would take that either on a coach ride or if you're reading a book down in a chair. It keeps your feet warm. You put coals in it, and they would put their skirts, their petticoats over it. Petticoats back then were made out of wool, so you didn't have to worry about them catching on fire as much. Wool, when it starts to burn, smells like it just stinks. It smells like
Like a sheep.
bitter almonds. Yeah, like a sheep. Yeah, it's really bad.
Now the house, the name of the house, Lafayette Durfee House, but the Durfees owned it.
It
so
should be
what does
called
Lafayette have to do with it?
Lafayette was. This was considered a way station. Durfees are French. It's a French name. So actually the name is Durf, D''URF. And they were thrown out of the French. I guess they backed the wrong king during the wrong war, and they were exiled to England. So from England, they went to Ireland, and then through here to America. Lafayette comes in because these people were gentry, as far as this is concerned during this time period. He was in the process of planning and coordinating the attack on Newport, Aquidneck Island. So the Durfees and the Fall River militia and the militias in this area from Tiverton and Freetown and surrounding areas, they were gathering in Fall River and plotting to get to Aquidneck Island to attack the British along with the French fleet. So this was going to be the first multinational invasion force. You know, you're going to have the French fleet and you're going to have the American soldiers. And French soldiers is a coalition, right? Unfortunately, it didn't work out too well. A lot of egos got involved. Lafayette had an ego. The French admiral had an ego. And they just didn't get involved. And then a storm came up that destroyed the French fleet and the British fleet. Okay. So it kind of postponed the invasion, and finally they did attack Newport. They were driven back, but the British left this area right soon afterwards. The battle occurred in 1778, and the British left in 1779, I believe. And January 1779, they went to Long Island. But from Newport, it was critical because with the British fleet down there, they controlled the entire eastern seaboard from Long Island all the way up to Maine. And then they had another fort in Maine that controlled it all the way up to Halifax, Nova Scotia. So Newport was a critical point for this area, that they had to get these British out because no supplies were coming in. The only supplies were coming in would be up the Taunton River, and they would have to run the blockade. And so the Battle of Fall River occurred in May of 1778, when there was a sawmill down here, and the British thought that they were making boats. They were constructing boats down here. So they sailed up the Taunton River in May 31st, 1778, and attacked Fall River. Colonel Joseph Durfee, with his 20 militiamen, went down to fight back to defend their town. And they ended up winning the battle because of the fact that the British were afraid because of the topography of the land, and the fact that the British were afraid to attack the Americans once they got behind a stone wall, or they got into a fortified position. What happened was the British landed down here near Battleship Cove, started to burn the sawmill. They burned another house down there, which belonged to Richard Borden. The Americans attacked them, and then the British counterattacked and drove the Americans up Pecassi. It wasn't Pecassi Street at the time, Pecassi and Anawan Street, all the way up to the South Main Street, right around where the City Hall of Government Center is. That was the main road, North Main Street, and there was a stone wall there. So the Americans got behind a stone wall and started firing back at them. 2 British soldiers were killed, many more were wounded, and a British officer was mortally wounded. He died later. His name was Goldstein. He died later in Newport. So Colonel Eyre, who was the British commander, thought that it's not worth it. We've already got the sawmill on fire. We'll cut our losses and we'll leave. But you have to admire these men, these 20 civilian soldiers. They didn't capitulate. They didn't look for terms of surrender or whatever. They went down to defend their land and to defend their families. And the British, when they left Newport, actually came up with 3 ships, and they came up with a gun platform on a barge. They had cannons on a barge that were going to bombard Fall River. And what happened was, luckily for the Fall Riverites, it got stuck on a sandbar near Bristol, Rhode Island. So that never made it up here, but it was on its way. Wow. You know.
So the question, did Lafayette ever sleep here?
Yes, supposedly he did, yeah. We do have some documentation, but not to the extent where we thought like he was like here every day, or maybe once or twice. I mean, that's about it. When the foundation was started, it was called Lafayette Durfee House. I think for the particular reason that there was a heavy French influence in Fall River. So in order to get these people drawn in and part of the foundation, they named it the Lafayette Durfee House. We have actually had the ancestor of Lafayette here, Lafayette's 230th birthday several years ago, when Mayor Lambert was here, the French consulate came down from Boston and stayed at the house, and we ate lunch at White's.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. It was an interesting time.
Thank you. Well, let's head to the ladies' bedroom because I think I need a nap. So this is the ladies' bedroom of the house, and in here there are some quite unique items that we're going to take a look at, right, David?
Yes, yeah.
Some that are a little barbaric to me, I have to say, as a modern woman, but that's just my opinion. It's not the way life was.
Can't look
So
at it like that.
this is true. This is
18th
true.
century.
This is
We're
true.
in the 18th century.
Yes, okay. So tell us a little bit about some of the things in this room, please.
Well, starting off with the bed, it has a canopy bed, and at night, sometimes this is a canopy, but they would have curtains around it. And this was to keep out the night air. They thought the night air was bad, that vapors traveled that night and they got into your body and made you sick. All the windows would be shut at night for that particular reason. But we got rid of, we didn't get rid of them. We just didn't put up the curtains because it's just too hot. All right. Men and women, husband and wife slept in here, maybe with some of the children, maybe with grandma who was traveling, or an uncle or an aunt would sleep on the floor. Servants might be up here on a cot or on a pallet. So when you see the idea of privacy wasn't as prevalent or as important as it is today to these people. Everybody just tried to get along and survive because your main concern was the farm and getting through the day, getting through the next day, getting through the winter, things like that. So privacy and individualism,
Not so much.
Not so much. It was a communal, a real team effort. Let's put a family effort. So with that, we have there's no daycare back then, so everybody had, when you had a baby, you took a baby with you. There's cradles in every room in the house. So if you're doing housework or you're entertaining or whatever, the baby came with you. All right. Babies back then, when they were born, at 6 months old, they were put into a set of stays.
I can't believe this.
And the reason was they thought that it would keep their spine straight while they were growing. Okay. They got out of the stays when they were approximately 3 or 4 years old. The boys did, but the girls stayed in the stays until they were till they died. Even when they were pregnant, women stayed in the stays.
And that's why a lot of women fainted throughout history.
That's where the term loose women came from. When you loosen these things up, they thought that your morals were low. The object of the stays was to give this ice cream cone shape, an inverted ice cream cone, and to make a woman stand up proper and straight so that she should be closer to God. Because as we all know, women are the daughters of Eve, and Eve was the downfall of man.
Watch it.
But this is what they believe. Okay, this here is called a calash. A calash, K-L-A-S-H. This is hand sewn by Hallie Larkin. Everything, all the clothing in here is by Hallie, even the children's clothing. So this is what a calash is, like a convertible buggy. All right, we all know what a convertible is. So when a lady would like to go out during the daytime, if it was windy, and to protect her hair, because the ladies didn't wear their hair down, they wore it on top of their head. Wearing your hair down was not proper, unless you were amongst your family. But if you went out, you always wear a hat, a cap. So this is to protect your hair in a windstorm or wind. So now we put this. If you want to.
Ooh, okay.
Let's just put this on. Now hold.
Over this low?
You got to get that right here. And you hold these two. And this is how it works. Okay. Now.
My mother has a plastic rain cap that sort of does the same thing.
The reason, now, you'll see that it's green. The 18th century people thought that sunlight coming through a green fabric on you was beneficial, was healthy. It was healthy to the eyes. And now, when you think about things that are green, We have money that is green, billiard tables that are green,
Trees.
sunglasses that are green. The early sunglasses were basically green. So, you know,
Might have been something to it then.
blackboards or chalkboards are green.
Used to be green.
Right, so there is something to it.
When I
you
looked
know?
at this, I thought it was just a bonnet, but it's actually a functional.
Yeah, it's a
piece.
functional piece of
Look at that. Folds right up to a flat
Yep.
little, just like a little accordion. These are incredible. Wait till you see these. They are incredible.
These here are ladies' shoes, and men wore these. They're called pattens, P-A-T-T-N-S. And what it does is it keeps your shoes are very valuable. You might only have maybe one pair, maybe two at the most, depending on your wealth. But it kept them out of the mud during mud season. And if you were going into a city, it would keep them out of the horse feces that was all over the place. So this is a very practical item. It's made out of cast iron and wood, and that's it. But this is what they would wear. Both men and women wear these to protect their shoes.
And that would actually lift the hem of their dress as well,
Right.
because they'd be higher off, so they
they'd be
wouldn't.
off, so they wouldn't get the hem dirty. The children here, you see, they're kind of like dressed like young adults. That's the way they would have been dressed. Now, something interesting about the girls here. You can notice the clothing. The boys has all his buttons in the front. Okay, the girl has all her fastenings are in the back, and I'm going to take this head off so it doesn't fall off.
Oh no.
Okay, so her fastenings are in the back here. She's laced into this dress. She needs help getting into this dress. She needs help getting out of this dress. The boy doesn't. He can get up and start his day right off. The girl can't do that. And what this does, it teaches at an early age that a woman's place is to be dependent upon her family or upon her husband. She's not to be independent like a little boy is being taught. She needs help. Her job in the 18th century is to run a household. And at a very early age, this is what she's being taught, to be dependent upon people. Hallie has seen, they were taught how to sew, how to embroider at a very, very early age, maybe 3 or 4. Hallie has seen samplers of, sample of stitching, hand stitching, that was done by a 6-year-old that she can't duplicate. And Hallie's been doing this all their life. So to say that these people were experts at what they did, they truly were, even though they were just normal, everyday people. If you go to the Victoria and Albert Museum online, that the Victoria and Albert Museum is in London, they have examples of 18th century embroidery work that they can't duplicate with machines. It's all hand done, and it was all done mostly by men. Men were the embroiderers.
And was the cap for a practical purpose or just for modesty?
It was for modesty as well as keeping your hair up and under the cap. All right, they didn't wash their hair very much back then. Like I said, they didn't take many baths. And the reason was, one of the main reasons is because it was so hard, it was difficult. You'd have to take the water in from the well, heat it up, pour it in a bathtub, a metal tub, and then take your bath, and then you'd have to, there's no drain, so you'd have to scoop all the water out and dump it outside. Now, when they did take a bath, the father took the bath first, then the mother, and then all the way down the line till the baby. That's where you get the expression, don't throw the baby out with the bath water.
Sure. It's not a good thing being the youngest child, I think.
No.
You had potty chair duty, and you had the last of the bath water.
The boys were apprenticed out, maybe when they got to be about 12, 13 years old. They apprenticed to learn a trade, blacksmithing, carpentry. Benjamin Franklin was a printer. He was an apprentice printer. This was part of what they did. They would leave for 7 years. So from 12 to 20, you would not see your parents. You'd be apprenticed somewhere else. Your parents signed a contract stating that you would be bound to that person, to that craftsman, to learn the trade. All right. He couldn't come home, and maybe once or twice during that time period, they did visit you. The master allowed you to come home, but you always had to go back. And once you completed your apprenticeship, you were giving a suit of clothes and a few shillings, and then sent on your merry way to start your own business. And that's how they got through the 18th century like that. The youngest kids sometimes would stay on the farm to help them, and then when the parents died, or as the wills, if the father did not will the property, register it in probate, all the property went to the oldest son. Even the wife, mother of his children, if he didn't specify that it was going to her, didn't go to her. Thomas Durfee did specify that his wife Abigail got.
There's one more thing I want to look at up here, and that is this device.
All right, this here. This is a set of stays, and it's laced in the back. Again, even as an adult, a lady has to need help to get this on. All right, excuse me. And what this does is it compresses all your internal organs. All right, the ladies would wear these from the time they were 6 months old till their death. They would only take them off at night. Now, to say they're uncomfortable is an understatement.
Uncomfortable.
When Hallie gets dressed up, she can only stay in these things for about 6 hours. Of course, our bodies are not trained. This actually was, it actually changed your whole physical prospect of your body's forming, because it formed into your body formed to this configuration.
So, like foot binding in China, similar.
Now, to add to the misery, they used a busk to put, the busk would go through the center.
A busk?
A busk, B-U-S-K, would go through the center, and what this would do is when the lady's body is compressed, her lower abdomen extrudes out, so this would keep her abdomen in.
That would hold in the pot belly.
Yeah.
So imagine bending over with
It would
something
be
like this, or picking up a toy on
Very
the.
hard, very difficult.
Who invented these?
Somebody that didn't like women, I can tell you that. But it was just part of what these people went through. You know, it was just it was considered a no-brainer by them. They couldn't live without it.
Just fashion.
It's just fashion, and it was morals. That upside-down ice cream cone, if you look downstairs at with the wide hoops, that was a sign of childbearing, that you were fertile, that you were going to have large hips, meant easy childbirth, and a lot of women died in childbirth. You know, so that was a physical attribute that was looked on as favorable. You know, this hat over here, men, like I said before, would shave their heads. So this is a hat taken from pattern from original from Colonial Williamsburg. How they again did this embroidery.
And it's a man's hat.
It's a man's hat. Yeah.
To go over the bald head.
Right. Exactly.
To be worn inside.
To be worn inside during the cold weather. These houses were notoriously cold. You could have a fire going in that fireplace there and put a glass of water over here, and it would freeze. If you went in direct contact in that radiant heat from the fireplace, you were freezing, because most of the heat was going up the fireplace. You know. So.
Well, Dave, I thank you so much for this wonderful visit here, and I encourage you all out there. Sunday afternoons, what are your hours?
1 to 4. We encourage senior citizens, any kind of civic organization, Boy Scouts. They can do merit badges here for their citizenship, history merit badges and things like that. Like I said before, students can do their civic obligation here. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're looking for more members. If a business wants to be a sponsor, we really like that. But we're here to help and to educate and have fun.
And to have people not forget.
And have people not forget what it was like. When we talk to some of the kids, the kids get the idea that, well, this is the way everything's always been, and it's not. You have to go back in time to appreciate what you have today.
So, folks, I'm here with Dave Jennings at the Lafayette Durfee House. We want you to come down on Sundays. Until the next time, cheers.